Are the Arizona Cardinals poised to draft the other edge rusher from Georgia? Johnny Venerable, Brack, PHNX Cardinals, Mykel Williams used the top 30 visit, did Monty Ossenford and the Redbirds, bringing in the 6'5", 260 standout from Athens, Georgia, to come in, potentially to bookend a player in Josh Sweat that our guy Fran Duffy said he mocks closely to. I think Mykel Williams, at the end of the day, is a player very much worthy of a top 15 selection. It's going to come down to scheme fit, health, but at 20 years old, so much to like.
And health was the big factor. And there was a ton to like about Mykel Williams. I think he was, at the beginning of the season, before the Bulldogs even played it down, he was considered the top edge in this class. But then, as we found at the Combine, he dealt with that foot injury throughout the season for Georgia, but there's so much to love. It's Fran's edge to 6'5", 265. He's young. Didn't you point that out about Mykel Williams?
21 years old.
21 years old. And would he fit in Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rollis's defense? I think you've already seen that. If he comps to Josh Sweat, and Josh Sweat had his career year under JG in 2022 with 11 sacks, what could he do with a guy coming in with a similar skill set? Maybe even a little bit higher, a couple gears left. Mykel Williams, man, sign me up for it. I think he is somebody I would pick no bones about at 16th overall. I think he checks a lot of the boxes here as one of the safer picks for the Cardinals in that spot.
Let's hear what Fran Duffy has to say. He made that count on Josh Sweat. What does he think of the standout from Georgia?
All right, time to talk about Georgia pass rusher Mykel Williams, a former 5-star recruit. He was a top 10 player in the country, regardless of position, coming out of high school. Ends up at the University of Georgia, and he made an impact right away. You saw him on one of the best defenses in college football, and he was a part of that rotation from Jump Street. He looks the part. I remember talking with former Georgia pass rusher Nolan Smith, now here in Philadelphia with the Eagles, and he said this guy is a spitting image of Trayvon Walker. Walker just went number 1 in the draft. Williams is the guy to watch down the line. Now, with Mykel Williams, like a lot of these other Georgia players, the production was not always there, and that is part of the profile, something that you have to consider. The pass rush win rates, the pressure rates, never really eye-popping, never had more than 5 sacks in a season, but always had at least 4.5. So he was always a contributing factor with the pass rush, fought through an ankle injury for the large majority of this season. That certainly had an impact, but I think when you're looking at Mykel Williams, one thing to keep in mind, before we get into the positives and negatives, you talk about that Georgia scheme and what they ask their guys to do. So much of his time was spent snug to the formation, close to the tackle, a 4-eye technique where he's on the outside shade, head up over the tackle, or even kicked inside a little bit further where he's between the tackle and the guard. He didn't spend a ton of time lined up wide outside. And not only that, he was also used so much. They do so much slanting and stunting, contain rushes where they're trying to open up things for linebackers and DBs blitzing through the middle or off the edge. And so that's going to impact all of those edge rushers and their ability to consistently get after the quarterback. But this guy has all of the tools. Let's get into the positives. And to me, it starts with that length, because you're talking about prototype type of size here and prototype wingspan for Mykel Williams. He's got over 34-inch arms. He looks the part. The game, to me, and that's where he made the biggest strides going from 2023 to 2024, he leans into that length. I thought in 2023 as a sophomore, it was a little bit too finesse. He was trying to win high side. It didn't always look like he was always going to try and had a fully fleshed pass rush plan. Watching him this year as a junior, even fighting through that ankle injury, you saw that this is a guy that knew where his bread was buttered as a rusher. So it all started with that length. He would use the long arm, he would use the bull rush, and he did a nice job of setting that up and then using that bull rush to set up other moves. He had a huge sack late in the game in October against Texas where he kind of faked like he was going to go inside with a bull rush, threw a little Euro step, and then dipped the corner against Kelvin Banks, who is going to be a likely first-round pick, the left tackle from Texas. So when you're looking at Mykel Williams, I think the arrow is continuing to point up. You're talking about a guy who's an outstanding athlete. He looks like a small forward. He moves like a basketball small forward. This is a guy that's got outstanding movement, a little bit stiff at 6'5", 260, turning the corner, but at that size, moves really well. He can close in a blur, and you love his ability again, to lead with his hands and utilize that length. And that's something that stands out, not just as a rusher where the arrow is still pointing up, but as a run defender as well. Really good flashes of holding the point of attack, getting off blocks, some stack and shed ability there off the edge. Now, this year, because of the ankle injury, he didn't play a ton on run downs. That was one thing that did stand out to me. They used him more of a specialty type of player this year. He did get starts. It's not like he didn't play on any run downs, but I think they wanted to kind of save him up a little bit just because of that ankle. That said, watching him in years past, this is a guy that can hold up against the run very well. He's really strong. He uses that length. He can lock out and control blocks from start to finish. And he's always been a really good tackler as well. So I think when you're looking at the pros, he's got the power, he's got the strength, he's got the movement to show that that improvement from a technique standpoint this year. That was really big for me. As far as a con standpoint, I mentioned the ankle injury suffered in week 1 against Clemson last fall. It caused him to miss a couple games, and then he was a little bit slow getting back, but he eventually did get back. You could see that it was still impacting him, but I appreciate the grit to kind of fight through that and show, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to mail it in here. I want to try and help this team out and see if we can get into the college football playoff. From a pass rush standpoint, the one area where he can improve, snap anticipation. He was sometimes the last guy off the ball, and that's a reaction quickness thing. That's not even, to me, that's not even the ankle injury. That's more just making sure that, you're wired into the snap count, get off the ball. This is a guy that didn't have a ton of quick pressures. A quick pressure meaning under 2.5 seconds. His quick pressure rate a little bit lower than you'd like to see for a top flight pass rusher off the edge. But again, when you're looking at the skill set and the usage, I think that might have had something to do with it as well. The other area where I'd like to see him get a little bit better, overall, just his pad level. He's a 6'5" pass rusher, so playing with proper leverage at all times, that's something that he's going to have to continue to work through. Played a little bit high, can get bumped off his path as a rusher, and then would get in trouble in the run game, just playing a little bit high. But outside of that, that's something that you can correct. Aside from that, I think that there was a lot to like there. And for me, look, at the end of the day, after Abdul Carter from Penn State, who's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft, Mykel Williams is the guy that I've got the most faith in to be able to hit his ceiling and be an impact rusher off the edge in this class. When you talk about the tools, the length, the quickness, the power, the strength, the effort, he's got some outstanding flash plays in terms of chasing plays from the backside with his pursuit. The flashes are all there. I think there's enough that you can bet on him making that ascension to become that level of rusher. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Josh Sweat. When Josh Sweat was coming out of Florida State a few years ago, Sweat had this, he was a big-time recruit with outstanding length and physical tools, but like Mykel Williams, was often used tight to the formation by Florida State, so you didn't always get to see him just kind of pin his ears back and go with the runway. I look at Williams in the same vein. Now, Sweat fell because he had a knee injury that caused him to fall to round 4 in the draft, and he ended up becoming a really good player. Williams is not going to have that kind of a fall, but I still think that that's the type of player you could see here in the NFL. He's got the ability to be an impact rusher, a solid number 1, or a great number 2. I look at Williams as one of the top rushers in this class.
Great stuff from our guy, Fran Duffy. And again, Bo, I think you and I have been pretty lockstep on this. Like, if he's available at pick 16, I think you make this selection, assuming he checks the boxes health-wise. You give somebody the caliber of Mykel Williams with his physical traits, a top recruit coming out of high school, to Jonathan Gannon. I just don't think he's busting. Is he ever going to become an all-pro? I don't know. But I look at him and I'm like, he's got the measurables of a Brian Burns, somebody who's almost 6'6" with the length. His arms are incredibly long. He is going to luck into some sacks in the scheme, this improved front 4, front 7 for the Arizona Cardinals. I think it's a very safe choice in the best possible way for Monty Ossenford.
I agree with you. And you look at him, and we mentioned the injury earlier in this VOD that, he was playing injured. He said he played at less than 70%, less than 60% health last year. And the biggest knock on him is the lack of production, but he showed up in big games, and he was I think he's one of those guys that win healthy and in the right scheme. And it certainly seems like Gannon could put this guy in a position for success. I'd love to see it. 21 years old when he gets to the NFL training camp. Like it's just one of those prospects that I think I would absolutely stand and applaud Monty Ossenford for making the selection of. Because then you look at him in his 3rd draft, he would take a Georgia defensive player, which has been in the conversation for the top defenses for half a decade now at the collegiate level. And then also the last 2 drafts, he took Ohio State offensive players. I mean, that's a pretty impressive haul that he's had in his first 3 drafts.
Mykel Williams would represent the culmination of the rebuild of this front 4 that had to be completed from free agency through the draft. Josh Sweat, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais, Darius from last year, and then the cherry on top would be the young man out of Athens, Georgia. What do you think about Mykel Williams? What's too early to draft him? If you're Monty Ossenford and the Arizona Cardinals, drop a comment, leave a like.